what was asked of the agency.
Okay, thank you. And one other thing. In the Iowa House, we passed the governor's executive order number 85, House File 2462. We have several senators here which control the Senate. Can we be assured that we passed out of the Senate so we don't have to go through this exercise again and again and again, i.e. CTEC, the Iowa School Board Association, Skills Iowa, and now this? I think to codify the governor's executive order is a good thing, and could one of you address that?
Sure, thanks for your question. The Senate has a bill in drafting. It does include language regarding the governor's executive order, as well as some whistleblower language, some language regarding the do not hire list, and many other things that have been uncovered since the investigation began, and that will be down from drafting sometime soon. So we are planning to take action.
Will you notify the House Oversight Committee members when that is so we can look at it?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And next, we'll right back to you, Chair Peterson.
Okay,
To
thank
be
you.
followed by Representative Papp.
Lon, thanks for being here today.
Certainly.
Tell me who is the person who calculated the settlements?
This would have been done with my finance team, which is several members that work on infrastructure, and Brant Carr, who's in charge of the design and construction area.
So who on your finance team calculated the settlements?
Julie Sturck, Erica Thomas, Morella Jusik, and they probably would have had some interaction with the state accounting enterprise, because all of this information is on the I3 system.
And since they work for you and they have run the calculations by you, they report to you, correct?
I told them to give me the figures, and I trust that the figures that they gave me were accurate.
Okay, and when they calculated the settlements, had they gotten an approval in advance of how much they were going to allow for the settlement, or who was negotiating the settlement amount?
The amounts were negotiated between the labor relations team and the lawyers for the people that received the settlements. There was a PERB mediator involved in most of those, I believe.
Who's on the labor relations team that you keep referring to?
Oh, we have, I can get you all their names.
Well, I just want to know the ones that were involved.
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Probably all of them. There's only, what, six labor relations specialists?
Probably, I mean, it's a pretty significant settlement agreement, so you're saying we don't know who was involved in which one?
Yeah, if you look at the settlement agreement, they'll have a labor relations specialist sign off on it.
Okay.
That's all public record.
Okay, and then who approved the amounts for the settlement agreements?
It would have been the labor relations team with the approval of the director.
Okay, are these the right names on the team? Karen,
Denise?
Stephanie Reynolds, Jeff Edgar, Neil Barrick, Pedra Gadsden, Laura
Momsen.
Momsen. Those are the names?
I believe there might have been someone that had left. I don't know. Oh, Karen left. Okay, so she was on the list though.
Okay, so for these settlement agreements, did you not have to run them by the Department of Management or the governor's office to get approval on some price tag at Lockheed?
No.
No, it was just done internally, only at DAS.
Well, not necessarily. I can only speak to the settlements that we did at DAS. When you have to notify DOM is if you exceed your budget, or if it has to go to the appeal board. There's several reasons why you would have to go to DOM to pay the settlements, but if you could pay them out of your operating budgets, which I assume, I don't know for sure, but I assume other departments did as well, that doesn't require approval. DOM wants to make sure that you're not overspending your budget.
Do any of the state agencies that work with DAS use their paid project management fees with federal funds?
I have no idea.
You have no idea if they do or not?
Nope.
Okay.
We would have no way of knowing, because We send them a bill and they pay it.
So you have no idea if they, what kind of funds they use when they pay you? Okay. Isn't it true that the settlement funds were paid out of the revenue from those project management fees?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Doug on
In
that.
I want to be able to assist and help answer your question. In which specific
Any
business
other
unit?
settlement agreements, were any of them paid out of the contained revenue from your project management funds?
In our business units, settlement fees were paid from the money obtained from doing those projects for agencies. So, for example, there's been a couple of different pieces of nomenclature that have been discussed within this room with this committee, and often it refers to the utility. There's really two different types of utility that happens in state government. One is utility, as the gentleman indicated last time, was heat and lights, for example. That's one utility fund. The definition for the way that the Department of Administrative Services, specifically the General Services Enterprise, obtains money to operate the Capitol Complex, and all of the state agencies that reside on the Capitol Complex, is called a utility fee, and it's really, you could equate it to a rent. They pay a particular amount of money per square foot to operate. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't confusing the two.
I just want to make sure. So agencies pay into you with project management fees. You don't know if they're using federal funds or what they're using, but then those revenues are contained in these funds that you use to pay out settlement funds, correct?
We have an operating budget, for example, within the design and construction enterprise, or the design and construction business unit, pardon me, and that is from an hourly fee that the design and construction folks charge for their time, the senior resource
And so
managers.
do you have agency project fees contained in those budgets?
Their budget consists of fees that have been charged to agencies
Right.
undergoing construction projects.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying, if those agency funds are contained in that, when you pay out a settlement, you are paying out a settlement misusing federal dollars.
Into that, I'm not aware.
Can I clarify? The fees are charged against the project, so the appropriations that Senator McCoy puts in his infrastructure bill, that has the appropriation, let's say it's for a new building in Woodward, the fees are charged against that appropriation. So it doesn't go to the agency's operational budget, it goes to the appropriation that is made to build that building.
Okay, didn't you just say though that you have agencies pay project management fees? You don't know if they have federal funds in them or not, but then that then rolls into.
I think you're combining two questions there. I thought your question was, do departments pay us fees, and do we know where those fees come from, whether it's state, federal, other funds? And my answer to that is yes. They pay us fees for service because everything we do is a service, and we have no way of knowing where that's coming from. Now, in the construction management end, it's based on the project, not on their operating budget, so we would know.
Could you walk us through on the $730,000 savings and why you continue to call it an annual savings?
Oh, certainly. Any budget is a year-to-year budget.
Sorry, we don't.
I'll answer it. As you know, I spent about 15 years doing budgets here for the legislature. And when you appropriate $1.7 million in a fiscal year, and then the next year you're appropriating $1 million, and then you continue to appropriate $1 million, you're saving $736,000 annually. It's an annual savings. That doesn't mean you're reducing the budget by $736,000 every year, but unless you go back up to the 1.7 million, it's not a one-time savings.
Okay, so let's just use like easy numbers for someone like me who's not really a numbers person. Say it costs you $100, and you let go your $10 people, and then you're down to $30 that it costs, right?
Right?
Okay, so then the next year, you're at 30,
Right.
right? But you're still saying Every year, we're gonna count what we did back.
Where am I in the
reduction
third,
force.
Senator, sorry to interrupt, where am I in the third year? Am I at 30 or am I at 100? Are you at 30?
That's what I'm asking you.
Yeah,
Are we
so
gonna keep
over a
counting?
10-year period, you would have saved $700. That's why it's cumulative. Unless you go back to spending that $100 in the third year, you're going to save $70 every single year.
Thank you. Appreciate the question and the answer. We need to follow that. Chair recognizes Representative Murphy to be followed by Representative Peters.
Thank you. Just a couple questions, and I'm going to go back to what Representative Peterson was just talking. So everybody's aware, this, which was Paul's handwriting, is now this, correct?
There, I need to explain the penciled out one. That was done, I believe, in 2011, and it was based on basically a guess. I don't want to speak for Paul, but we've been asked to get the lingo on that and pretty it up, which we'll do. But for my money, that is pretty irrelevant at this point, because what we now have 3 years later is experience.
But this is the FOIA request.
But
That's what I.
that's
so
how
this
you got
was
it. That's how you got
technically
it.
this updated now, correct?
Right, because we have 3
Okay.
years of experience too.
Right.
And that sheet does not calculate any of the construction
Okay.
managers as agent or change orders. It's just staff.
Okay. And just to go back to the discussion we had here the other day, all the settlement agreements are on the website, so if there's any new ones, those are things that
They will be posted in
if that
redacted
happens.
form.
Okay, just so that we had that in an open discussion. I want to go back to what Senator Peterson was just talking about with either with you, Mr. Anderson, or with you, Mr. Woodley, and that is, when she talked about, you said there's a utility fee. You said it's sort of like, and it's not, I know there's a difference between the electricity and the heat, but that there's an actual, like, you consider it a rent fee, correct? Is that the way you put it?
You could most commonly equate it to what you would pay as a rent in the private sector.
For the square footage.
For your office space, yes, sir.
Correct.
That's correct.
And you charge that to all the state agencies on the Capitol complex, correct?
That is correct.
So the Department of Human Services would be the example I'm going to use, which uses lots of floor space over the Lucas office building. 2/3 to 3/4 of, we only appropriate about 1.5 billion of their budget. The rest of it is Medicaid and other federal funds that come in. So roughly 2/3 to 3/4 of all the dollars they get are federal funds, correct?
I believe so. I'm not well versed in their budget,
Okay.
but I do know that many of our agencies have federal contributions as well as money appropriated by the state of Iowa.
Okay, and you charge them a fee which goes into this fund, correct?
Yes, sir. Known as a utility rate
Okay.
per square foot.
And that utility rate then was used for the purposes of them paying for their square footage in those buildings, correct?
Square footage in the way that we operate at the Capitol complex. Correct.
And then the settlement agreements that were reached came from that fund, correct?
No, sir.
One settlement agreement would have been paid from an operating budget within CCM. There was one impacted employee during the reorganization that was a CCM or Capitol Complex maintenance employee.
And so was that out of this fund?
One of those payments would have been from this fund.
So
One of
we
those
actually
settlements.
may have some federal dollars that flow through to pay for services that were used. So it's not just, I know we were talking about Dean Ibsen's earlier, which is separate, but for one of these, there may be federal funds that were used in a settlement agreement then.
Yes,
Possibly.
potentially, yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Because I wanted to just go further on where you were at, Senator Peters, before we did that. Now, I want to talk briefly, and I thanks for letting me steal some of your questions. I was very good at that in high school and college. Just real quickly, in regards to, Mr. Anderson, in regards to your responses, when you talked about the analysis here on this budget, you talked, and I guess the first question I have is, you talked about when we went through this, that there's a 6-point 6.7 million, $6.6 million savings.
That's just for the general contractor part. The total savings is just shy of 10 million.
Okay. Is that 10 million reflected in cost savings to the state budget that you can show through the infrastructure budget or general fund dollars that we actually saved money that the taxpayers get to see?
Right, and you see that sentence in there, the savings allows us to stretch the major maintenance dollars further. So essentially what we've done is been able to do $10 million worth of additional construction. So I know Senator McCoy is very concerned about major maintenance money and where that ends up, and this is a way to stretch those dollars, $10 million further.
But the question I have is, have those been reported back to us so we get to see them?
We're reporting them.
Other than you're reporting them now, but I mean, has that been done over the last 3 years?
We have a lot of supporting material that goes with this, so we can show you all of that. It's just, I just didn't think bringing 120 pages of backup was appropriate for the time that we have.
No, but I mean, like, to be able to show where
The 10 million, yeah.
Yes. And so, let's talk briefly then about when you talked about Mr. Ibsen and his movement from DAS over to the office of...
Let me clarify.
Okay.
He was always an administrative services employee. He always was. He moved from one division, well, not always, but in this time frame we're talking about, he was still in DAS. He moved from the vertical infrastructure in general services to the energy bank within general services, voluntarily.
But I thought you mentioned that...
You finished your last point.
Okay, on the energy bank, just real quickly, I thought you said it was over in the
Office of Energy Independence, that was prior to Economic
And it closed
Development. Yeah.
Okay.
Economic Development Authority, which
Yeah, that's
in
what I was gonna say,
2011,
Economic Development
came
Authority.
to us in 2011, and that after that point was when Dean moved over.
But you didn't have that. That's a separate standalone agency.
No, the energy bank itself was within general services of DAS.
But we
And-
have the Economic Development Authority running the program?
At the time, Economic Development Authority did not believe they had the expertise to do it, and which is why they signed an MOU with us to run the program. So even though they were the proper custodians of the money, they had asked us to run the program as it was intended, and that's what we did.
So technically I'm sorry to do it, but technically, it's still in the same question, but technically, you're saying now that he was a DAS employee all along? Because from your remarks, I thought he went to the Economic Development Authority, and maybe other people in the room didn't hear what I did, but that's what I thought. Well,
I apologize for not being clear on that. The energy bank, it was very complex, and I don't know if I did a great job of explaining that, but when it came to us, and after that point, was when Dean Ibsen went to work for it.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I want to go back to this sheet, this one here, and anybody can answer this. So in the settlements, this was money settlement. This was salary settlements, correct?
It wasn't all salary. There was some deferred comp. There was some buyback of papers.
Okay.
It was a whole combination of things. There were some lump sum payouts.
Okay, and okay, good. To that point, I think that's what I was going to be asking about pensions, IPERs, any.
It really, sorry to interrupt, it really depended on what the person that was agreeing to the settlement wanted. Everybody had different needs and wants, and so you can't really say it was the same for all of them. You know, somebody might have wanted IPERs because they were a long way from retirement. Somebody might have wanted deferred comp because they were close to retirement. It depended.
No, I got that. So let's back up just really quick. So if there was an individual who wanted to continue with insurance, was that continued?
I don't know that specifically, but I suspect it was.
Okay. So give me, if you can, and if you don't have it now, that's fine, but later, what is the continuing payout for that insurance plan?
I don't know that information.
Could we get that?
Yeah.
Because that should be reflected in this as well. And if you can get how many people that would
Now,
be
just to
reflected.
step back, to my knowledge, there aren't any reoccurring payments for insurance. They might have got a lump sum, and they said you can use this lump sum to to pay the employer's share of the insurance. But we're not making that monthly payment. There's a distinction there, and I wanted to make sure you were clear about that.
That's fine, that's fine. I'm more interested in how that all played out at the end. So if we could get that, that would be good. Because and I know this was a rough draft. I know this was a rough draft. I guess when I looked at this, and this is clarified here now, when I looked at this, I thought to myself, this number seemed to was higher simply because it may have reflected when you talk about pensions, IPERs, or insurances. That number, and even though this is a savings up here, this did not appear to reflect any sort of IPERs or healthcare or any of that. So again, that's no cheat, and I'll back away from that. But I guess I want a true reflection of those cost payouts so that we can say, okay, these are the things, boom, 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 1, 2, and 3. So I think that's what's really important.
Representative, I believe, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, each of the settlements that's on the internet has a breakdown, I believe, of how that lump sum was arrived at. So that is all publicly available already.
I can look at that.
It will differentiate between deferred comp, IPERS, salary, slip.
Okay. All right. Currently, right now, then, how is there a savings if the new people coming in currently now? What savings? They're still being paid IPERS like anyone else. They're still being paid.
Right. This budget, Representative, the FY13 budget of $1,021,718 is salary and benefits, in addition to other administrative costs. So it's all included in that $1 million figure on the front.
On the front.
And paragraph 1. If you look at that $1,021,000.
Yeah, I see it now. Okay.
That would include all salaries, benefits, expenses related to their operations.
And this is just a question. This is not an accusation of any kind. When the new people came in, were there any bonuses affixed to that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Could you check on that for me?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very good. Next, Senator Shane John, followed by Representative Pettengill.
Thank you, Chair. This is for Mr. Woodley on the DAS document here. Could you explain to me what are bidding thresholds in change orders?
Yes, sir. Which would you like me to cover first?
How are they tied together? What are they?
Sure. Bidding thresholds, bidding in particular would fall through our state procurement agency. And so there are bidding laws and bidding rules under Chapter 26 and other chapters that institute how we would conduct bids, whether they be a bid, a quote, or a proposal, RFQ, RFP, or RFB. And then change orders, sir, are primarily a part of the construction process after a construction project is underway and being implemented.
So are there thresholds that deal with change orders?
There's, to my knowledge,
$5,000 limit and a $50,000 limit. What is that?
that would be, I believe that you're referring to something that might apply to purchasing, not to a change order.
Okay, let's go down that avenue.
Okay?
Purchasing.
Sure.
Well, how does that work?
When a good or a service wants to be purchased by an agency, then there is a process that would be undertaken to procure that good or service.
Would that apply to a construction project that's underway? So I'm in the middle of a project and I need a change order. Is there a threshold in there where over and above I can't do a change order, but over, under, and below I can?
The change order process would be approved internally.
Okay.
So it would be initiated by someone what we would refer to as in the field or actually on the construction site. And then the change order, there is a process that goes through how those change orders would be approved and implemented.
Okay. So who writes the change order? Would like the Ryan Company or the Samuels Group or construction manager, who would write that change order?
they could write a change order. It would typically, change orders can come, it can be very different depending on the project, but a change order can be initiated from anyone on any part of the construction process. When it's identified that a change needs to happen, when there was a circumstance that was what we would consider to be an unforeseen circumstance or something that wasn't originally planned for.
Could that, what would be the content of a change order? What would a typical change order say? Would it be language about dollars and cents? Would it be language about personnel? What would the change order?
Depending on the actual change order, it could include all or none of that information. It really depends on what it is. If it would be a situation, if we were constructing an office complex and we wanted to add more electrical outlets, for example, that weren't in the original design, that could be a change order, and it would change orders at times can be volumes and volumes of documentation to go with that change order. Also, when you have a change order, you have what the rationale for that change order is, and then you also have any costs that would be associated with that change order.
Would there be anything in the change order that would deal with the project labor agreement at all?
I don't know that I know I'm not real familiar with project labor agreements, and so I don't know that I would know the answer to that,
So
sir.
there would be any dollar amounts mentioned in there for payment to somebody or someone, would that be in the change order?
Absolutely. All change orders involve some sort of a cost. Some change orders, very, very rarely, some change orders can actually have a cost deduct. Almost always, oftentimes, the change order has a price increase tied to it.
Could it even involve a change of vendor?
It could involve a change of vendor, it could involve a change of specialty contractor, it could involve a change of methodology, it could involve a change of product, pardon me. Change orders are extremely dynamic and varied.
Okay, so let me look at the bottom of your page here. You've got total dollars, total change order savings for completed project. And I see a figure on there, on our item 2 of 91 million. Okay? 91 million, 96588.
Oh, yes, sir, I'm with you now. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay?
Yes.
How come that's not the number then that's up on item number 3, where it goes to 142 out of 149?
Senator, I'll handle that. The difference in the two is, and I glossed over this when I was explaining it, but in order to calculate the savings for change orders, we can only look at completed projects. In the third paragraph, it's all payments, and we have several projects that span multiple fiscal years, so there isn't an apples to oranges comparison between those two figures. However, the closed projects of 91 million is included in the 147 million on the back page.
And what's the other difference?
Ongoing projects. Ongoing projects. And we won't know the savings on change orders on them until they're completed.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chair, next call upon Representative Pittsfield, to be followed by Representative County.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this might clear up one of the questions on these documents. It's interesting that a meeting on settlements has turned into dissecting the savings summary, but the numbers that are given here are by fiscal year, and the numbers that Ron Robinson gave in his memo were from January 1, 2011, prior to the reorganization. So I think that may be why.
That's part of it. I'm also told that we have a general contractor at the maximum security prison and the women's prison, and so that would have added to the construction manager cost, and that would explain some of that difference. We did not include those in our calculation of the savings because we felt, even though we are saving money under the CMA process, it was a general contractor. So we had to separate that out. So that also explains why there's a difference between LSA numbers and our numbers.
Okay, well, between the dates and, I mean, if you're gonna try to compare two documents, it'd be nice to have the
I-
parameters of the numbers.
I
the
can
same.
have my team work with LSA and make sure that you guys can see an apples to apples comparison on that.
All right, thank you. Then I'd like to go back to why we are meeting, and something that Director Carroll testified to a question that I asked. I asked him, was there a exclusion for hire list? And he said no, there was a code associated with people who were not going to be rehired. And so how did we all of a sudden get a list?
Well, the list was because the Associated Press did a FOIA request of all the names that had been disqualified. And so the list didn't exist until the AP did their FOIA request, and then a list was created for them. We never kept a list, and so the director was not speaking falsely. We never kept a list. It's a code on their personnel file, and the only way they know that they're coded, unless, well, they should know at the time of termination, but they would find out again if they had reapplied for state government.
Okay,
So the only reason a list exists is because of the Associated Press.
all right, that makes sense. And then what circumstances, in general, would put a person on that ineligible for rehire?
There are
status?
several things in the code that explicitly lay out why you cannot be employed by the state government. I don't know what those are off the top of my head. I'm told that the administrative rule on this dates back to 1987. So that gives me concerns that this list is 100% accurate. But I can't speak to.
All right, would the passage of our bill help with that?
Absolutely.
And this has really been bugging me too. I had to write this down before I came in so I didn't forget. Is there a possibility of an employee who's on this ineligible for rehire code, is there a possibility that they would not have been put on a registry to keep them from being employed somewhere else? So say an elder abuse registry, or a sexual abuse or child abuse registry, or the predator list.
Yeah, it's certainly possible, but I don't want to speak to that because I don't know the circumstances that would warrant that.
Well,
I know that
for
they're-
public purposes, I want to know, is there a way that someone could quit or be terminated from state employment and then go out and work in the private sector and be a dangerous person?
Under the current system, that certainly can happen.
Then we've had a lot of discussion on rules and debating on rule breaking and rules changing. And I'm the Administrative Rules Review co-chair, and I take that very seriously. So I've reviewed all of the rule changes that were done in complete sunshine. They went through the notice, they went through changes based on feedback, then they were filed, they've been in front of the Rules Committee a number of times, and those were effective on November 21st of 12.
Are you talking about the confidential employee rule?
Yes.
Okay.
There was nothing nefarious there. It went through everything, in complete sunshine, like I said. Have that here, during debate in the House, there was some claims that these rules were put into place to justify procedures that DAS had been following, which is not what I found to be true. I reviewed the rules chapters 59, 60, 61, 62, 65, 66, I've got them all here, and chapter 4. Every single document that I reviewed that was a settlement agreement, grievance, appeal before PERB. All of them followed the procedures and rules that were set out before November 12, when the new rule was adopted. So, I'm not sure where all these claims are coming from. Do you know?
Representative Pettiel, I think there's a lot of confusion about why that rule was updated. It wasn't to remove people from contract covered status. It wasn't to make it easier to terminate people. It was the administrative rule had an objection on it. And the departments were asked, if you have rules that have objections on them, you should fix that so those objections go away. And that was merely what we were attempting to do.
Your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair calls upon Representative County, Representative Carlson, and we will return to so Representative County.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I have a question, kind of following up on what Representative Murphy brought up.
Yes, sir.
Regarding the mayor employees that are posted online. The term redacted form was used. I think it would be helpful if you could be specific in terms of what that means. What is redacted? What is omitted when that is online?
Right.
We not see.
We work, DAS works closely with the Attorney General and to follow the law as interpreted by the AG, what can be made public and what cannot be. And the AG errs on the side of cautiousness, which I totally understand. And so like for instance, when the settlements went on the internet, we sat down with them and they said you should take this, and this out before we posted it.
That'd be, as in, what is this, and that?
It is like, I think what home address and what was the reason of termination, the social security number, and there's a whole litany of things. Yeah, medical history, if there's anything on that.
So I just don't know why a person was fired, which therefore the layoff, which may have led to settlement agreement.
In following the law and redacting the documents, no, you're right.
So House File 2464 would allow Iowans to know exactly why someone who was a state employee was fired, which led to a settlement agreement.
As I understand it, yes.
Okay.